Hey guys, Dan and Sally here. We are here in San Diego, California for the release of the new Sony A6400 and the new firmware update for the Sony A9.
Yeah, this was definitely an interesting release, both on the firmware side and on the A6400. Not what we expected,
No.
but this is your new vlogging camera from Sony. We actually have our favorite lenses and accessories and gear, especially for the setup you would need for this camera, that we think will make it awesome for you, so check that out as well. But we're gonna take a look at this camera and see what it can do and if it really is an honest improvement from the A6300. So the major improvement on this camera is going to be the autofocus system, and there are a couple things that have gotten better about it. We now have 425 points, covers 84% of the screen, so that is really, really good. The two big things that we are seeing is now we have continuous eye autofocus in our normal continuous autofocus mode. So no longer do you have to kind of hold a button for eye autofocus. It is now just a part of the autofocus system. It worked phenomenally well. It was great. I think this will help anyone shooting anything from families to pets to just about anything you could possibly shoot with this. The autofocus system is going to be one of the best you can do. And then the other big benefit to this is new tracking modes that allow you to just touch or select an area or an object, and it will continuously track that object across the frame. That also worked really well. It's not quite what they've done with the A9, but it is still very good and among the best you'll see. And overall, this is probably one of the most intelligent autofocus systems on the market today. It definitely, I saw a big improvement from it from the previous generation cameras. So, I was overall very pleased.
So when it comes to image quality, this camera does produce quite nice images. Now, when it comes to an APS-C camera, you do have a limited amount of lenses. So I kind of had that fight in between myself where I wanted to use my full frame lenses. I did throw on a 24-70 on here, and man, it did produce a beautiful image. And that's another question to ask. Full frame lenses on an APS-C camera, does it work? And it really does, as you can see in this image. And honestly, this camera is, for what its price point is, I think it did a great job. And the images look great.
So the big negative here is that we do not have in-body image stabilization like the A6500. I don't know why Sony chose to update this camera instead of that camera, but that's what we have here. And so we basically have more of an entry-level system. I understand why it would not be in a $900 camera, but with a focus on vlogging and self-shooting, you would think that that would be a major focus here. It is not. The good thing is there are some really nice lenses from Sony that do have image stabilization in them. I'm using my favorite here. I'll link it below. And then we also have a wide angle that does have image stabilization in it. So it's not a horrible situation. And honestly, I never loved the IBIS technology that Sony was using in the A6500 anyway, but keep that in mind. We do have HLG recording, which again is something from their higher end cameras, something that I'm pretty sure no one will really want to use on this camera. Keep in mind there are some crops when you go into 4K at 30 frames per second and again at 120p in 1080p. So there are some slight crops on there. We've seen that before. Just know that in advance. Also, the touch to focus, which is in video mode now, is just really great, is not available in the 120 frames per second. So little bits of limitations here and there, but overall it's a very good video system. Now back to the screen, it is bright even when shooting in 4K, which was an issue on the A6300 that used to dim. But while the touch functionality here has been improved, it's still one of the worst touchscreens on the market. It is the slowest and most lag of any of the touchscreens right now. And you can only access the touch to focus. You cannot access any of the menu settings or the function menu. Of course, all of this means that for 2019, this camera has a lot that's left out. I mean, we have no USB-C, no UHS 2 cards, and overall the design is not my favorite. Absolutely could use some improvements in ergonomics, button placement, especially with this video button being all the way to the side. It's just not my favorite camera in hardware and use. We do have a lot more customization now in this camera, so you have some new custom menus that you haven't seen before, custom controls over your eye autofocus, and overall much more custom functionality over the autofocus system in general. So this is welcome improvements from really a more entry-level camera that you would typically only see on their higher-end cameras.
So when it comes to battery life, the A6400 definitely has improved from the A6300, and we are thankful for that. Given there is a new processor, it does work a lot better. Now, the battery is used from the other A6000 products that Sony produces, which is nice, so you don't have to purchase new batteries with this.
And finally, we have time-lapse back in these cameras. It has been missing for a while. It's something that I personally use all the time. However, it is a little bit more limited. Again, we cannot create a time-lapse movie from those shots in camera. You can shoot in the S&Q mode. It will produce a 1080p simulated time-lapse, but there are so many limitations there. So it has an intervalometer. You can take those images into your computer, produce a time-lapse there. I just wish they had some options to actually create the time-lapse video in camera, especially for a more entry-level camera. I think a lot of people would be interested in that. Just like the A6300, we're dealing with 11 frames per second. If you go into silent mode, you will get 8 frames per second. In fact, a lot of things are going to be basically identical to the A6300. So if you want a starting point, you can actually check out our full review of that camera, and you're going to see a lot of this information. Some other big improvements were on the video side of things. So obviously, we now have this flip-up screen, and we all know that this is not ideal. I'm pretty sure they did this just to not have to change the body style completely. A flip-out screen is better for most purposes. However, yes, for vlogging, you have the microphone in the way. You might have to get a bracket or something to move it out of the way. So I think this works a little bit better than before as a vlogging camera, but it's still really tough to make it work.
Yeah, I can barely see myself behind the fur of the microphone over there.
This is not working.
No.
But there are a lot of other uses for a flip-up screen other than vlogging that you still might appreciate it. And so overall, it's a welcome improvement, if not the ideal situation. But we also have unlimited recording now, so there is no time limit recording. The camera doesn't seem to overheat as much, so that's very good. And the autofocus system is also improved now for video, so you should be noticing much better face and recognition as you're shooting your subjects, and much more control about that AF system.
Overall, for its price point of $900, I think this camera is a great camera. If you're starting out or you are a vlogger, I mean, it is a pretty good camera for that. Now, I would say 3 things that we like the most. My number one would have to be image quality. It's for a $900 price point. Again, it is a great camera and produces great images, especially when you throw on maybe even a G Master lens.
Yeah, and definitely the autofocus system has gotten way better on this. It is really nice to use either the tracking or the normal modes with all the continuous ability that it has in face detection, eye detection. For video or anything you're using it for, it definitely did get better, so it is one of the best focusing cameras on the market. market. That's just the way it is. And then video on this still, we're taking the already great A6300, we're making it slightly better on this one with the enhanced AF. And yes, I know this is kind of a joke, but it is better than not having a screen that flips out at all. It's not the ideal situation at all, but you know, should you get this camera, it's definitely an improvement over the A6300. The price is about right for this. I think it's a solid step up for you if you're looking for that. I think this will be a great second camera for a lot of people too.
Yes.
Again, stay tuned for the full review. There's a whole lot more information that we've got coming up soon, and our recommended kits and gear and everything like that that we use for this. Thanks guys for watching, and we'll see you real soon.